They're live.
Well, welcome to the April 8th Eclipse version of the meeting of the University of Rhode Island Board of Trustees Governance Committee. The meeting is being held in person with some committee members participating remotely. At this time, I will conduct a roll call attendance to determine if a quorum is present. Please clearly respond present via WebEx or present in person when your name is called. Chair Courtney Nicolato, I'm present via WebEx. Vice Chair Jay Placencia.
Present via WebEx.
Charles Fogarty.
Present via WebEx.
Monica Garnis.
Present via WebEx.
Hey, Garns or Garnis?
It's Garns.
All right, I will I will do better. Thank you.
Thank you.
Matthew Lenz.
Present via WebEx.
Joseph Matthews.
Present via WebEx.
Robert Wagan.
Present via WebEx.
David Caprio. And President Mark Perlange.
Present WebEx, thanks.
Quorum is required and is present. Also in attendance, we have Board Chair Margot Cook, as well as Vice Chair Armand Sabatoni, and they are participating as invited guests. For the benefit of all, I'll ask Board Secretary Michelle Carreri to recognize members of senior leadership who are participating today as well.
Hi, we have Anne Marie Coleman, we have Carol Larson, we have Chelsea Berry, we have Provost Barbara Wolf. I'm just going across on the squares, so apologize for being out of leadership order. And we have Alyssa West, who's also our committee liaison. Hopefully I didn't miss anyone. Thank you.
Thanks, Michelle. Reminder to all members for the benefit of our audience and the note taker, please clearly identify yourself whenever you comment, make a motion, or a second to a motion. Participants using WebEx are required to keep their cameras on as remote members, and all persons present at the meeting location must be clearly visible and audible to each other. At this time, I'd like to acknowledge that the University of Rhode Island occupies the traditional stomping ground of the Narragansett Nation and the Niantic people. The first order of business is approval of the minutes. May I have a motion that the Governance Committee approve the minutes of the February 7th, 2024 committee meeting?
Charlie Fogarty, so moved.
Thank you, Charlie. Can I get a second?
Bob Wagan, second.
Thank you, Bob. Any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, I'll ask for a voice vote. All in favor, please say yes.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? The ayes have it. The motion to approve the minutes of the February 7th, 2024 committee meeting is approved. The next item on our agenda is item number 2, discussion items. Number 2A is around URI Board of Trustee appointments. We've had a busy few weeks. Trustees Garns, Fascitelli, Fogarty, and Matthews were reappointed in January with a February 1st, 2027 term end date. In March, the Rhode Island Senate confirmed the reappointment of Trustees Kerwin with an expiration date or a term date of February 1st, 2025. Trustee Luna with the same February 1st, 2025, and myself have been reappointed with an expiration date of February 1st, 2027. We're thrilled to welcome back David Moderano. Was appointed to the board in March, and he was replacing Richard Humphrey. David has been assigned to the Institutional Risk and Compliance and Academic Affairs and Research Committees. And so excited to see David back. I know many of us have had a chance to work with him in the past, and for those who haven't, you will enjoy what he brings to the board and all the expertise and perspective. So looking forward to it. Any questions on our appointments? Okay. Item 2B is student trustee appointment. So for folks that may not know, in our bylaws, it states the appointments of the president. The president will appoint one faculty member who shall serve in a non-voting capacity for a single 2-year term, and one student member who shall be a full-time student in good standing with the university who shall serve in a non-voting capacity for up to 2 1-year terms. And so April is the time of year where we start to have that conversation. And so I'll turn it over to President Parlange to share an update.
Yes, so thanks, Courtney. I'd like to continue for another one-year term. So the second year, Riva Goyal as student member. I think we've all appreciated her active participation. She herself is not only is she a PharmD student, but she's been extremely active with many student clubs and organizations and has, I would say, a good sense or broad sense of the issues that face the student body at URI. So, and she served us well. So I appreciate her. Certainly the other day up at the State House, she did a good job representing the Board of Trustees and the students. Also very good sense of humor. So, so I will recommend that she continue for an additional year.
And I agree wholeheartedly. President Parlange, Riva's been a great addition and provides great perspective. And I don't know when she sleeps exactly because she is super active on campus and did an absolute great job at the State House as well. So thrilled to hear she would be joining us for another year. And I believe on the faculty appointment, we're halfway through, right? That she's only Melissa's only been on 1 year. Is that correct? I believe so.
Yes, that's
think so.
that is correct. Yeah.
Good, but because Melissa's also great and look forward to her continued support and continued work on the board. Any questions for President Parlange?
No.
Okay, great. Item 2C is around our annual board retreat. So our board retreat is on Friday, June 28th. I really appreciate the governance committee who's provided some thoughts on, really what we want to, talk through and spend some more time on the retreat digging into. We've taken all of those comments and I'm going to turn it over to Chelsea to provide an update on some of the thoughts around the agenda.
Sure, thank you. So President Parlange and I discussed just some items that were kind of happening at the university level and specifically around health and biomedical sciences. We, as many of you know, put in our budget a GEO bond for biomedical sciences building. So thinking about how we can talk about the strategy around that bond, how the university is playing a role in the state with the Life Sciences Hub specifically. I know Armand and Mark are both on that Life Sciences Hub. How health sciences and biomedical sciences will play into the university's strategic plan over the next few years. And we've got some really exciting things going on with 3 new health-focused deans, and Provost Wolf was able to kind of moderate a really great panel with some of our donors and alumni with Patrick Vivier, Danny Willis, and Carrie LaPlante, which was very well received. So kind of talking about those colleges' vision for their colleges in the near future. And then we've got some great faculty who are doing some really interesting things in those fields. We've got the Ryan Institute co-directors who have testified on behalf of URI for our bond. And some other folks who are doing some great things with biomedicine and wearables and sensors and things like that. So we were thinking of that in terms of, bringing a university perspective and how we're kind of thinking about that over the next few years. But certainly open to other topics as well. But that seems to be kind of top of mind for us here.
Yeah, if I can just add, Chelsea, I think the one important thing was last week we had the neuroscience student poster day. It's something that really, in terms of research university, it's so important to see the good undergraduate research that's going on the campus. We've had 2 undergraduates that have joined me up at the State House for testifying. We have one who's studying chemical engineering. She's doing research basically in biological engineering. She's going to go on to do her PhD, but it's great. She moved to Rhode Island from the Dominican Republic when she was 18. She went to CCRI and finished in 4 years, working her way through. And then she deliberately came to URI because of the research opportunity. And then most recently, we had another student who also a Rhode Islander, Lincoln High, the public high school, graduated top in her class, really wanted to stay in Rhode Island, will go to medical school in Rhode Island. She's a junior, but she's already been admitted to Brown as an early admission, and also planning to stay in the state and do community health care in the state. So very unusual for Brown medical students to stay in the state. So that's great. But I would just say that it really gave me such a good feeling to see the world-class research being done by our PhD students as well. And then the individual projects that our students, undergraduate students, are leading on. So that's something I think that would add a lot. The Ryan Institute is coming of age. There are, it's really on this upward swing. And then, as you mentioned, Chelsea, Barb Wolf, our provost, had a really good conversation with the 3 health sciences deans who bring a lot of good new ideas, good new energy and potential there. So topically, it's important for us, I think.
The governance committee, I'd be curious to get a pulse check how folks feel about the topic.
Courtney, this is Joe Matthews. I think it's great. I like the idea of continuing to advocate for the research end of things. And I think URI has an opportunity, particularly in the area of healthcare, not just with the students, but now this new Department of Public Health, this new program. I think there's a real leadership opportunity here. So that's great. Always good to look forward. Thank you.
Thanks, Joe. Anyone else from the committee want to share thoughts? All right, so it sounds great. I'm excited about what we're proposing. I also want to make sure that we're aligning the time we have. Obviously, we're going to have some time like we normally do to talk about the board, its function, the goals that we're going to talk about next agenda item, and then also time to be together and get to know one another. I know that was a priority for this group too. So I'll work with Chelsea and the team to develop the agenda and the timing around everything, and we'll get that out to this committee so y'all can see where we're going. Does that sound good?
Sounds great.
Great. Thank you.
Courtney, I think Mark mentioned this, and I sent this in my email earlier. I would want to tie this conversation into, if we're going to have a strategic discussion like this, I know we're not ready to fully talk about what a medical school would look like, and there's a study underway. But I would want to tie this in at least at a high level, so that we understand how it all works together, and if the sort of basis for excelling in life sciences as we do is a catalyst for the medical school, is a competitor of it. Like, at some point I'd want to understand from whoever's speaking, Chelsea, to like weave that into it, especially since it'll be public. We'll want to make sure we're looking at that as an eventual decision as we talk about this topic.
100%.
Thank you.
Good, thank you. All right. Item 2E is board goals and KPIs. So this is a carryover topic. I really want to thank Michelle and Jay, who have done a great job taking all the feedback and putting it together in a draft set of goals. So for folks, just as a reminder, we, based on a self-assessment from last year and the board retreat from last year, we've set us on a path to create kind of, just some goals that we as a board want to strive towards. And so, Jay, I want to pass it over to you to share a little bit about what we've put together and make sure that get some feedback from the committee.
Right, very good. Thank you very much. And I also want to call out Monica, who also has given us her feedback around this document. And this is a working document at this point. We still don't have it finalized. The next step, so that you're aware, is that we're going to clean this up nicely. We're going to send it to the entire committee for comment, and then the hope and plan is that we share it with the board meeting in a couple of weeks. I do know that this doesn't have to get approval or anything, but I know that Michelle and her team will be creating a dashboard and keep track of all board engagement. And I think at the end of the day, all we're trying to do here is, and this was born out of the last retreat last June, but what we're trying to capture is really board engagement, based on what we, in essence, signed as our commitment to URI, to not only give of our time and but also give of our treasure. So that's part of what we want to also keep track of. And we're working with the foundation to gather that data. There are many other points that we want to gather data on, but these are not, we haven't received that data as of yet. But there are many different points that we're going to gather and then give the document to you guys for review. And hopefully we'll get your feedback back before the April board meeting. Is that right, Michelle? Before April, is that what we want?
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank
Okay. Very good. And it's not like, we're not boiling the ocean here, guys. We just want to keep track of how many, what are you doing as a board member to be involved further with URI? So I'll just share that next Wednesday. I'll be speaking. So that's how I'm getting involved. So I look forward to seeing all of you in the same circuit. Again, that's all I really have as far as the KPIs are concerned. Did I miss anything, Michelle or Courtney or Monica, being that you've seen it?
I'll just note, I think that there are areas where we're not collecting data that I think we should be using the board self-assessment to be collecting data. And that's kind of why I flipped the items here. If you can catch that, Michelle usually calls me out on it. But I thought it was helpful to have this conversation around, the board KPIs. One of the areas that we've identified as a collective board is to continue to seek knowledge and accelerate progress on each trustee's justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion journey. One of the things that it may behoove us to have is an equity assessment done of our knowledge, where we sit currently on that trajectory of knowledge, and what trainings and tools and resources we need as a board to continue to grow in that journey. And so I've asked Michelle to connect with the folks that work in this realm every single day at URI, so that we can have a follow-up discussion. But I do believe a good resource coming out of this will be a full plan on how we want to continue to grow as humans and as trustees in our Jedi journey. So more to come on that.
Yep. So, and I think we're gathering data in all these different areas. It's just a matter of how do we compile all of this into one dashboard where we can all keep track of it, and then we can see how we're each doing as board members. So that is, in essence, my report. It was simple and sweet.
As always. Thank you, Jay. I appreciate you.
Thank you.
Going back up, any questions on the goals, Jedi? We'll get that all out to you all after this meeting. Would be great, Michelle, if we can send the draft version out to the committee so that they can take a look and provide feedback.
Yep.
Great. Thank you. Going back up to 2D, the annual board self-assessment form. So tis the season. This is normally the time where we'll send out the board self-assessment form to the board in anticipation of our conversation that we'll have in June. And so normally what we do is send that form out right after the April board meeting. We'll keep it open for just a few weeks. We'll want to have it all closed up by, mid-May, a little after mid-May. Then we'll review those self-assessment forms, and we'll utilize that to help craft the conversation that we'll have around our board governance and what we want to do as a board and what our goals are tied to that self-assessment. So the only thing that I think is really important is making sure that the goals that we have are tied to the things we're asking in the self-assessment. So I don't think we need to stray away from the questions that we're asking already, but I do think we might want to enhance a couple of the questions based on these KPIs and these goals that we have. So, but I know folks have had, and some folks have had an opportunity to see the self-assessment in the past, but for if you haven't, the types of questions that are asked are, there's some Likert scale questions. So on a scale of 1 to 5, how would you rate your work as a trustee related to supporting and advancing the educational mission, respecting governance boundaries, ensuring that we have sound financial management. There's then some open-ended questions. There's about, I'd say, 6 or 7 of those talking about how you have participated to move the mission of the university forward, how you would rate your effectiveness as a board member, what would you like to do as it relates to the coming year. So really just taking and understanding where we stand, how you believe you're contributing to, and what you would like to see, what you would like to do in the future. And so I will make sure also that a copy of this assessment goes out to all the governance committee members so you can take a look at it prior to the entire board getting it.
Mhm.
Any questions on the assessment? Okay. All right, I'm going to turn it over to you for Jay for 2F, the annual review of the governance committee charter.
Very good. So the governance committee charter was created in 2020, if you can imagine, and we've been through numerous iterations, but the practice is for us to take a look at this every April, so that we can finalize it and have it completed by June. But I guess it was last year, June, that we amended it finally. So we just wanted everyone to take a look at the charter. I don't know if you wanted to pull it up or if you wanted to send it to, actually it was in the enclosure. So hopefully you get a chance to look at it. But if there are any changes that you'd like to make or suggest to the committee charter, now is the time so that we can take a look at those and just sort of discuss these and see if we will make these changes and get them approved by the June board meeting. So it's an annual thing, and they would change last June. So they are in your enclosures. So in essence, it tells you what our job is as the governance committee. So hopefully we've all taken a look at those. And that is all.
Any
Right.
questions or modifications on the charter? All right.
All right.
Thank you all. The next item is focused on the governance committee calendar. And so this is again an annual review. We look at this to really determine, is there anything that needs to be switched or modified? I do want to bring up one of the things that we are talking about is policies particularly. So when we first started the board, the policy or process for policies was to bring it to the governance committee for review, and then the next meeting, bring it to the governance committee for approval. We are looking and analyzing that to streamline it. I don't think we need to bring it twice. I think that there's an opportunity for us to review and approve that. So we'll want to, I want to bring it to the committee and get some thoughts. Is that something that feels okay, or do you think the current process should stand? So I want to get some thoughts. Joe?
Joe Matthews, I think quicker is better.
Yep, agreed.
Monica Garnes, not sure if you can see me. I would agree if we can get everything, if there's something that would bleed over, I think that's an exception. But if we can get everything finalized in one swell swoop, I would agree with that.
Bob?
I also think it should be quicker is better, but it also gives us the opportunity to consider it over 2 meetings if we wanted to. So it doesn't preclude that from happening, but it gets us to be more efficient, as Joe said.
Yeah, in essence, like flipping the process, right? So
Yeah.
we're only taking the ones that we feel like we need to have further discussion rather than holding all of them off for 2 meetings, right? Good.
Melissa,
Chelsea, any thoughts? I know we're gonna have to make some edits in various things to accommodate this, but I wanted to pass it off to you since you and I have been talking about it.
Courtney,
Yep, Armand?
can you hear me?
Yes, I
This
can, sorry.
question's for Alyssa. Alyssa?
Mhm.
Okay, so you know in depth, we discussed this also on the finance committee. Who's gonna take jurisdiction at the general meeting over this committee or the finance committee? Just make sure one or the other, because we got an overlap on this issue.
Yeah, I mean, I think both committees need to look at it because it hasn't been a policy or a written procedure. It's just been a preference that was expressed previously, I think actually by administration. I think it was actually the prior VPAF that wanted to bring it twice to the committees. So it's not something where we need a formal decision. There's no policy or practice that needs to be revised. It's just us coming back to the committees and saying, do we really want, have you come to expect that we come to you twice, or are you okay if we just do it once? So it's really just getting the feedback of these committees and not any requirement for a formal action.
Okay, which one's gonna report on it?
So
This
it'd be
committee or
governance that
finance?
would report on policies, Armand?
Just pick one.
Yeah, it'd be governance. So what we'll want to do is we look at the policies to determine what other committees should at least review them and provide any feedback. But it's governance that will take them, get them, and provide recommendation to the board.
Okay,
All right. Any other questions on the calendar above and beyond the policy piece? Okay. We'll continue to move on. If there's any edits or any recommendations, we'll happily accept them as you continue to review that. So thank you, thank you. Item 2H is the review of updates to the university policy on the approval and execution of contracts and other binding documents. And so I'm going to turn it over to Alyssa for this item.
It's getting so dark in my office, I have to put on my desk light to read my
I
notes.
know. Same here.
So this is an example of a policy where we are going to be coming again because this is still in the process. We're going to bring it to the APC for approval, but we have some changes and they relate to the policy on approval of contracts and particularly sections that relate to board approval. So we wanted to make sure we get the feedback of the Finance Facilities Committee and this committee before it goes on to the next step. So effectively, we had passed this policy. The board had approved a policy on approval and execution of contracts and other binding documents. It created some financial thresholds for approval of contracts. And we had encountered situations, particularly in purchasing, where the approval was based on the threshold and the value of the contract at the time of the original approval, but then there's some sort of a change order that happens, or there's an exceedance on a contract and we have to increase the amount. And that was creating some, confusion about how to apply the policy to these amendment and change order type situations. And so the main thing that's changed in this proposed policy is to create a process for approval of change orders and amendments where it's either a contract that was already over the $5 million threshold for board approval, or where the change order and amendment would bring it over that $5 million threshold. And what we didn't want to do was have a situation where very small amendments end up coming to the board just because the contract itself is large, because it's pretty common, especially like with needs requirement type contracts, construction contracts, things might go over. And so what we did is we defined a process where if it falls in this category of board approval based on the size of the contract, it would require the president to approve it. But if it was a material change, it would require the board to approve it. And we define a material change as the greater of $1 million or 20% of the contract value. So if it's a $20 million contract, $1 million change might not be a huge deal. And that's why we have that dual test of whether it's considered a material change order or amendment. So that's the most significant change we were trying to address, and that's in section 4 of the policy that was provided. There's also a couple of other smaller changes. One is just the sort of administrative requirement that we had inserted in the policy to have delegations. These are delegations from the authorized signatories to, for instance, their AVPs or their vice provosts to approve certain types of contracts. We had made that an annual process, and we've taken that out. We can still do that as a procedural matter, but we didn't feel like that needed to be in the policy because it created some issues when there were just administrative problems with people, getting delegations updated and so forth. And then the other change is in when we have master price agreements with the state. So it's basically us participating in a state contract. So it's not really a contract that we have any power to negotiate, and we're participating in a contract that's already been negotiated by the state. We wanted to carve that out from the size-based approval requirements for the Board of Trustees.
And Alyssa, I think you mentioned that this also went in front of the Finance Committee. Do you have any synopsis on their feedback around the policy?
Yeah, no, the Finance Facilities Committee raised no concerns or questions regarding these changes. And just how we were going to deal with change orders had been discussed with the Finance and Facilities Committee before, so they had already been previewed on some of these types of issues and questions. And we decided it was best to just make it explicit in the policy.
Questions for Alyssa on this policy?
Makes sense to me.
Same. Joe and then Bob. Joe, you're on mute.
Alyssa, only that we're a state-owned institution. When you were working through this process, are we consistent with any other state departments, Rhode Island state departments? I mean, is our approach kind of in line with what others do? That would just be a question that I have. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, we are somewhat different because we have our own Board of Trustees, so we do operate differently, and these things fall within the purview of the board. But we were definitely cognizant of the different thresholds associated, for instance, with the board's delegation related to approval of real estate contracts, the different authorities and powers that are given to the board and the president in our statute, the different purchasing regulations that apply, whether we're under state funds and state purchasing regulations or our Board of Trustees regulations. And so we were looking at all of those things and assuring that the policy was consistent. There isn't an example from a state department of a change order approval process because there aren't state departments that have these kind of detailed policies like we have. But I think where we have a Board of Trustees and we've created these approval thresholds, we need to have this clarity.
Bob?
Yes, Alyssa, this may be very something to discuss, but does this pertain to research grants and other grants that we may receive in terms of the change order to a particular grant?
Yeah, this has to do in terms of the dollar threshold definition, and these change orders have to do with the dollar threshold definition, has to do with expenses or obligations of the university, not revenues. And so this is not about a dollar threshold for approval of contracts based on how much revenue we receive from it. So it doesn't relate to grants, for instance, unless it's a commitment for an expenditure under a grant that brings it over the threshold.
I'm thinking that eventually, hopefully, we'll be doing much more work with outside organizations, industries that are relating to our research. How does this pertain to it, or does it? Maybe it does not.
Well, it pertains to it just in the sense that we have clarity through this policy as to who approves those. So in the past, it wasn't always clear who had signature authority to approve different types of contracts. So this is not just purchasing contracts. This is any contracts across the university. This policy created clarity on who within administration has authority to sign different types of contracts. The new change order or amendment process would apply even in the case of something where we have a research-based contract. So for instance, we have a subcontract out related to a research award, and that subcontract is worth a certain dollar value. If we then enter into an amendment that brings it over the board threshold approval requirement, then this would trigger this change order approval process or amendment approval process.
Any other questions for Alyssa? All right, thank you, Alyssa. The next item on the agenda is item number 3, our action items. 3A is the approval of the policy on employee recruitment, selection, and hiring. And so I'm going to turn it over to Anne Marie Coleman, who will walk us through this agenda, this action item.
Thank you, Courtney. this is a policy, a new policy, but it's actually a compilation of policies that have existed at the university related to recruitment over the past many years. Following the establishment of the Board of Trustees, we took a comprehensive review of all of the policies of the Council on Post-Secondary Education that needed to be updated. And in addition to that, on August 1st of 2022, the university made a decision to streamline the hiring process for non-classified staff and faculty. And prior to that, there was a mutual kind of a bifurcated search process between the Office of Human Resources and the Affirmative Action Office at the university. On August 1st, we changed that process. Now the university has primary ownership in HR for all searches for faculty, non-classified staff, and our civil service employees. And the affirmative action, now the EEO office has taken over the responsibility for training and audit after the search process. So this new policy is you'll see at the end, it's many policies consolidated into one and updated to streamline our existing policies. And there will also be a comprehensive procedure that will go along with this policy. And if passed by the board, it will go into effect on July 1st, 2024, to allow the training of all of the new search chairs prior to becoming effective.
Thank you, Anne-Marie. Any questions on the policy? I had a chance to read it. I didn't see anything that was glaring to me or, drove a question from my perspective, but want to check, see if anybody else had any thoughts. All right. Hearing none, may I have a motion that the Governance Committee recommend that the URI Board of Trustees approve the policy on employee recruitment, selection, and hiring as presented?
Charlie Fogarty, so moved.
Matt
you,
Len,
Charlie.
seconded.
Thanks, Matt. Any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, I'll ask for a voice vote. All in favor, please say yes.
Yes.
Any
Yes.
opposed? Any abstentions? The ayes have it. The motion is approved. One more just quick note before we adjourn. Currently, all trustees should have our conflict, our ethics forms that need to be filled out, so that you should have received that at home. I believe the due date is April 26th. And so if you have not completed, please do so. I find that online is the easiest way to complete it, as it mostly often keeps your information from year to year. So please and thank you for doing that in a timely manner. I am a fan of our board being the gold standard, having things done and done as soon as possible. So thank you, thank you. All right, may I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Thank you, Charlie Fogarty. Second, Jay. I heard Jay. Thank you very much.
Mhm.
I'll ask for a voice vote. All in favor, please say yes.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? The ayes have it. The motion to adjourn is approved. The next URI Board of Trustees Governance Committee is tentatively scheduled for June 2024. I look forward to seeing everybody in a couple weeks.
See you all then.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Courtney.
Thank you.